back. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with us. It feels absolutely great to be in your company. And in case you're just joining us, welcome to Kenya's Gold, where the focus of the day is on how mangroves are helping when it comes to combating climate change. Now, climate change conversations are a must-have because, like I said, the Earth is facing a crisis. So come on all, pull your seats closer as we learn from our expert of the day, Charlotte Cherono, who is a project officer from Wetlands International. Thank you so very much for making time to be with us today. Now, if you allow me, let us jump straight into the conversation and help us understand a lot more on the work that is involved in Wetlands International.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for having us. So Wetlands International is an international or a global NGO that works towards safeguarding and restoring wetlands, not only for nature, but also for the people. So we work in different aspects. We work along the coast and deltas. We also look at the rivers and lakes. We also look at the peatlands. But for this one, we are focusing on the coastal and deltas aspect of it. So that's what we do as Wetlands International.
All right. Now, maybe you can tell us the trend in the people that you're working in Wetlands International. Are we seeing youth in the practice as well, and how are they taking in the conversation of all matters climate change and climate action?
So we work with a wide array of stakeholders, I'll say that, starting from government, following we work with the communities, we work with other CSOs and also private sectors. So when it comes to the aspect of youth, we are very key in that, and our work really touches on making sure that those who are vulnerable and those who can nurture, or those who are key when it comes to change, not for the generation but the future one, are key in our activities and our work.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about working with those who are very vulnerable, grassroots community, people who are completely in the interior, most of the time when you talk about climate change, it sometimes sounds too scientific, all right? Even the terms that are there, ozone layer, global warming, percentages, you know, sometimes it becomes very hard to digest for someone who doesn't have like a certain level of exposure or education. How do you make sure that this information is mashed properly to a point it can be digested with everyone across board?
So there are different ways this can be done, because as you've said, climate change is just climate change. The term, it's English, climate change, but we call it in Lamu and the coastal region, mabadiliko ya tabia nchi. That's how we know it. So there have been efforts to make sure that people understand that there is climate change, because it's not only affecting those who know the definition, but also affecting the vulnerable communities who are very much dependent on the natural resources. So one way is through awareness, just making them understand that why did it take long to rain this year, as it should have been, or as it should, it's always the tradition. So we try and unpackage this information in a more friendlier way, using scientific information that can be digested by the community, and also using local knowledge, the indigenous knowledge.
Now, when we talk about mangrove, we've learned so much from the feature on the importance that it has to environment, and we've also learned that July 26th is the International Day for Mangrove Conservation. Somehow this information is not very out there for very many people. We'd like to know what happens on this day, because when you talk about National Tree Planting Day, International Day of Forest, we see government, private stakeholders give out seedlings for people to grow, and the call to action to plant and grow trees. Maybe you can help us understand, how do you officiate this ceremony?
So the International Day of Mangroves is an important day that is supposed to speak for mangroves and the communities and the stakeholders that surround it. And each year we have a theme that comes with it. It could be a theme that touches on conservation. It could be a theme that touches on innovation technology. It could be a theme on conservation, or well-being, human well-being. So it's important because it brings all these people together to understand how important it is. So this is always done, or it's spearheaded by the regulatory body. This is the Kenya Forest Service, which is, they are mandated to conserve this forest in collaboration with partners and also the community. So when this is done, we've seen a lot of planting during that day. The only maybe challenge could be if not done right, or if the end goal is not growing, that is when the challenge is. But if it's meant to be planted with sustainability, like this vision of making sure that 10 years, 20 years, that tree will still be there, then yes, we are doing right and we are trying to return the ecosystem back to its original state.
All right, you've mentioned something very important. We need to plant right, and we'd want for you to help us understand how we do that right. But before we do, there has been a decline in mangrove cover, not just locally, but in the world. Because you're an expert in that area, please help us understand what are some of the major threats towards the mangrove establishments.
So why we need to return them is, yes, as you've said, we've seen some decline. And for Kenya, our biggest threat is one, we have the illegal logging. As you may know, Kenya's mangroves, logging or cutting them is banned, apart from one area which is in Lamu. Lamu is the only area where the moratorium was lifted so that they could allow the community to access and utilize these resources. So illegal logging, because legal logging is legal allowed, but the issue is now illegal logging, which we've seen reducing the coverage in Kenya. The other one is awareness issues, or in terms of coordination and all that. We see sedimentation. For instance, when we go to Tana Delta, you'll see the delta is really degrading because of sedimentation, where the sediments come and sit into the mangroves, or they enter into the mangroves, suffocating these important ecosystem and their roots. So the other one maybe could be development, maybe unplanned development. Planned is okay, because they are mitigation, but unplanned development can also result in loss of these ecosystems.
Now, if you talk about unplanned development, we're seeing a lot of resorts, tourist destinations, people coming up with beach houses, and some are in areas where there used to be mangrove. Is there a body that helps to regulate that so that they can say, no, here you cannot put up this building? And are those lines very clear as of now?
So mangroves are protected by one act, a legal body or a legal document, the Kenya Forestry Act 2016.
Right.
And under this act, there are stipulation or measures or regulations that have been put there to ensure that they're protected. And one body that ensures that these mangroves are protected is Kenya Forest Service, which work not only alone plus the community. This is the Community Forest Association. So one aspect that they look at is enforcement and ensuring that these forests are protected and no encroachment is done, like people entering and doing all those construction and that. So if you see there is a construction that is in a mangrove area, then maybe that could be as a result of maybe an encroachment, which is one threat that we face also as Kenya.
Are there consequences for that?
Now that is under the jurisdiction of Kenya Forest Service.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So maybe, Hapo, there's a conversation we need to have.
I'm not sure, but yeah, it's under the jurisdiction of Kenya Forest Service and the regulatory body.
Great.
Yes.
Now that we have understood the importance of the mangrove, and also we're very cognizant to the fact that there is a decline in the mangrove cover, we want to plant. Help us learn how to plant correctly.
So planting has been done for the longest time possible. As young as I am, I got into the industry seeing people plant. And most of the time when planting is done, there's a lot of lack maybe of knowledge that we could say, or awareness, which shouldn't be a problem because now people are learning the right way of how to go about it. Initially, it will just, okay, for mangrove propagation, they use seeds, which are called propagules or seeds themselves. So it's easier to just plant because you can just take the propagule and just put it in the soil as you move. It's not a complicated thing to plant. But the complication comes to, are you doing the right thing?
Right.
Because mangroves are dynamic in terms of the ecosystem. There's a species that should be sitting in a place that another species cannot be there.
Right.
We have 9 species, and each and every species is unique in its own way. So if I take, for instance, a Rhizophorum cronata tree and go and plant where there should be Sonerasha alba, probability of it not planting is growing is high because of salinity issues,
Right.
because of the soil and the likes.
I've not heard you mention seedlings. Do seedlings apply when it comes to growing mangroves?
So the easiest way of growing mangroves is using propagules. Seedlings happens when there is need to assist, number one, and number two, when the propagules are not doing well.
Right.
Mother Nature gives propagules, which should be used for regenerating. But seedlings comes in when you need to help or assist. Maybe the propagules are not working well, so you add in by putting them in nurseries.
Right.
That is one. Or number two, when they are not reaching the right ecosystem, there is no seed bank or the mature tree.
Suffered less destruction. We'd like to get to understand how that works. What is the science behind that? And that will be happening after this short break that we're taking right now. Don't go anywhere. We're back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Continuing with our conversation with Charlotte Cherono, we left it at the fact that in 2004 there was a tsunami that hit South and Southeast Asia, killing over 230,000 people. But the regions that do have a healthy mangrove cover suffered less destruction. Someone is wondering, what is the science behind that? Please help us understand a lot more on that.
So mangroves grow as a transition, between land and sea. So they create a buffer. In their nature, they have roots, for instance, intertwining roots, and also their height creates protection to the coastal communities just adjacent. So this is what happens when there's strong waves or strong winds or all that. They try and shield using these roots. For instance, the roots break the wave strength or the wave action, and the winds also, their height, because they grow very high, they try and break the wind. So most of the time we are lucky as Kenya because we haven't really experienced such, but with the climate change issues coming up, we are not sure. But when we have mangroves, at least we feel like we are safer because we'll be protected.
Great. Now create a clear picture on how lack of mangroves contributes to climate change.
So mangroves are very important because they store a lot of carbon. They store so much carbon.
Is it more if you compare it with normal trees?
5 times
Right.
than the terrestrial forest. So it's very important that they are there to store this carbon. And as we're seeing the climate change, the temperature is rising, we really need them to help us sequester this carbon and store all these so that we can regulate our temperature.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm in Nairobi, right? And as we've seen from the feature, it's coastal people that really are doing this practice.
Yes.
But all of us are benefiting from it. We travel there, and if there's no mangroves, the effects will affect everyone, even me who's here, another one in Ukambani, and so we shouldn't leave it to be a responsibility for people in the coast. But now I'm wondering, how can we participate? What can be done so that even if I'm not necessarily there physically to grow it, I still want to be part of this initiative? Are there ways that we can do that?
Yes. So these communities or those who are involved, the support is never enough. For ecosystem restoration and conservation, the support is never enough. So there is more support needed, especially for the communities because they're most vulnerable. So like these groups, they're form groups. We have CFAs. For instance, we have the Lamu CFA, we have the Mkonombi CFA, we have the Party CFA. These CFAs are organized group that one can reach directly to them through their chairman. And we have also CBOs, the one we've seen, Party Resources and Tourism. That is another one. You can reach directly to them. They are there, they have a chairman, they have a channel of communications, and you can help them. But not only in restoration, we are key in livelihoods because this is very important. For instance, beekeeping, ecotourism, crab farming, and the likes. Yes, so there are channels to reach them through either directly or through other organized groups like CSOs. Yeah, you can reach them, or Kenya Forest Service.
Now that we have an understanding of just how important the mangroves are when it comes to saving our environment, please also help us understand economic benefits of the mangrove.
In Kenya, we have the National Mangrove Management Plan for 2017 to 2027. And there we have valued our mangroves at 270,000 per hectare per year. So they're very important. This is in terms of tourism. This is in terms of poles, building poles, which you've seen most hotels in the coast. They have these poles that are very nice. Those are from mangroves. In terms of fisheries, in terms of regulatory services, and in terms of even cultural services.
And when we talk about their importance when it comes to the blue economy, how does that work?
So right now we have a strategy for blue economy, that is the strategy 2023 to 2027, and it has objectives. And one objective that is key, that is connecting now mangroves to blue economy, is tourism and fisheries. So these have been targeted and have been mentioned in this strategy for blue economy. And we see fisheries very key because mangroves support 70% of all the fish that we get in Kenya. So when we're talking about blue economy, without mangroves, we don't have fisheries per se, and we don't have blue economy.
Now, as we wind up this conversation, we have seen the different kind of support that various agricultural subsectors are getting from the government and policymakers. If we were to extend the same to establishment of mangrove, what kind of support would work so best for people who are doing that practice?
So when we talk about fisheries, that is a sector that is also part of agriculture. You know, we have mariculture, we have aquaculture and the likes. So when it comes to these areas, apart from these communities being key as fishermen and looking up for mangroves, there are also small-scale farmers who do a lot of other farming activity. So if we balance these as a way of also conserving, coming up with alternatives, we call them nature-based solutions, and it will be a win-win for both mangroves and for also other agricultural sectors.
All right. Thank you so very much, Charlotte, for talking to us today and giving us a lot of tips and education on the importance of mangrove. This has been a much-needed class, and good job in what you're doing at Wetlands. Please pass our regards to the rest of the team when you go back there. And that is all the time that we did have for you today, and of course this entire week. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you so very much to all the farmers that made this week a success. Of course, the team that is working tirelessly on this production, we say a very big thanks, and our audience for choosing to be with us every single day of the week. And of course, you know, always come through with the parting shot, and today it's going to be a little bit creative and dramatic. So here we go. So here we are. Hot is getting hotter, cold is getting colder, bare lands are increasing, and our oceans are getting emptier. And you're wondering, why is this happening? Yet we keep doing it to ourselves. Think about that. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Violetta Ngina. Goodbye.